Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And my name's Tyler Osby.
And today we're doing our last episode. That's right, the last episode on id Software.
Not our last episode ever. Just
no,
the
not
last
our last episode
on
ever.
id
I
Software.
realized saying that sounded a little weird, huh?
Yeah. Which is just our last one on the Masters of Doom by David Kushner.
Yeah, we're still here. It's okay, everybody.
Yeah, we will continue to make episodes every week, but not on Masters of Doom anymore. So where we last left our heroes, do you have anything else do you want to cover before we get started, or do you want to just jump right in?
I think we should jump right in. I'm feeling it today. Let's do it.
So we last left our heroes. They were in the middle of like another controversy about violence in video games. Columbine had just happened, and so it became kind of known that the perpetrators were big fans of Doom. So it had people that didn't even play their games mad about the content in their games, but they also, at this point in time, had fans of their games mad about the content in their games. Specifically, Quake 3 was a little bit of a controversial thing for them. So at this point, they had announced Quake 3. But Quake 3 was fundamentally different from Quake 1 and 2, and I think you talked about this in our last episode. Quake 3 was different because it had no real single-player, like story-driven component that the first two games and all the Doom games were. All of the stuff they had made thus far had sort of like a level progression where you play through a story, however flimsy that story may be. But Quake 3 didn't have any of that. They went all in on deathmatch, and they basically made what was just a multiplayer only game. Like technically you could play by yourself against bots offline, but you were just playing multiplayer against bots instead of against real people. So people weren't really doing that. It was a multiplayer game first and foremost. And it was designed to be played with other people online, which was pretty cool. But here's the funny thing that I find interesting about this period of time in gaming. The first test of Quake 3 was actually done on Macs, and people weren't super happy about that. There's a .plan file where Carmack has to kind of defend why he did it on Macs, and I don't think that's in the book, so I don't actually know why they decided to do that.
I don't know if they mentioned that either. I don't think they did.
So that's what's going on at id, but Romero, he is having trouble over at Ion Storm too. So the Daikatana team, which also was known as the Ion 8, had left. They didn't want to make the game anymore, so they left, and they formed their own company called Third Law. And it's kind of reminded Romero of the time where they all just packed up and left Softdisk to form id. Only this time it was Romero was being left. Oh, he had a taste of his own medicine, and it was bitter.
He was Alvacovius now.
That's right. Oh, look at me. I am Alvacovius now. At this point in time, Romero and Stevie Case had started a relationship too. She was the lead designer at Ion Storm. He just divorced Beth because of the pressure he was under to continue making great games. And the book kind of notes here that he made a big realization. He was married to his games. And Stevie was his lead designer, and so being with her allowed him to spend time with her and also make games at the same time. So that's what they did. They rebuilt the team after the Ion 8 had left, and they continued working on Daikatana. They finished moving the game over to the Quake 2 engine because they had made so much of it on the first Quake engine, and then Carmack showed off Quake 2 and all this cool like lighting features that the Quake 2 engine could do, and Romero was like, get me some of that Quake 2 action. And they promised a definitive release date at this point of February 15th, 1999, which was a date that they would for sure hit and definitely not go over. Well, they did. Right after announcing that date, spoilers for this thing that happened 20 years ago. Right after announcing that date, there was an article written about them in the Dallas Observer detailing the internal strife and struggle at Ion Storm. It did not go over well, and the team was pretty demoralized. So they had to delay the game again. And then all of the Columbine stuff happened, and it was all just like a lot for Romero. And, I can understand that. He felt pretty defeated. And by now, the Quake 2 engine that they'd spent so much time converting their game for was in danger of becoming old news too, because Quake 3 had been announced, and of course, Carmack had a slew of technology upgrades in the works for his latest blockbuster. And the Quake 3 engine would go on to be an engine that was used for years for so many games. I think the Medal of Honor series would use it for their most popular games. Call of Duty, the first Call of Duty games would be based on it. Star Wars, Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast. There are just tons of games that would go on to be based on the Quake 3 engine. So it was a pretty big deal.
Now we're like bleeding into real time here, getting into some modern franchises.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit, even though we are still talking about 20 years ago. But in May of 1999, 1 month after Columbine, id went to E3, and nobody wanted to talk about their latest title, Quake 3. All they wanted to do was talk about Doom and hear from the creators themselves their thoughts on the controversy. And obviously, nobody at id wanted to talk about it. They just wanted to make their games, just wanted to show their new game, and all the reporters didn't care. They just want to talk about their 6-year-old Doom game. And they just had tons of reporters at their booth too, which was like, not exactly what they were there for. They were there to show off their new game, not talk about their old game with reporters. So that was kind of a bummer.
I forget that Doom is 6 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Too. Like, and they are now every big press outlet in the country wants to talk about it, when they were struggling to get press in the beginning.
Yeah. And now that's all anybody wants to talk about is Doom. And it's like, ugh, it's old news. Why are we still talking about this game? But at this point, they had a publisher in Activision, and they were able to kind of deflect a lot of their questions to their publisher. And Activision, who was very seasoned in publishing, they knew not to say anything at all. So reporters didn't really get what they wanted when they went to E3 to talk to id, because id just directed them to Activision, and Activision just shut up. So we're at E3 in May of 1999. Quake 3 is what they have to show there, and they were having some technical issues. So like I said earlier, Quake 3 was announced as multiplayer only, and then Half-Life happened. And it seemed absolutely crazy to anyone that you'd release a multiplayer-only shooter in those days. So Half-Life had happened. Unreal was right around that time too. These two very campaign, single-player-driven, story-driven experiences. And so for id to come out and say, "Nah, we're not going to do that. We're just going to make this thing multiplayer only," was like a big deal. And it was like, why would you do that when there's all these great games coming out that have great single-player? And also, we're at 1999 here. So this is a time where most gamers had some kind of 3D acceleration card, but not everybody had one. And there weren't any games that really required a 3D acceleration card. You got a whole bunch of benefits if you had one, but nothing like casual gamers or low-end gamers didn't have to have one. But Quake 3 was going to buck the trend and require a 3D accelerator card, which was kind of a big deal. And it was like, oh no, this game's going to actually be way more expensive than you think, because you're going to have to buy all kinds of hardware upgrades. And Quake 3, people used Quake 3 as a benchmark for years after it came out. Like I remember seeing new graphics cards come out in 2004, 2005 in the magazines, because when print magazines were a thing, they would still benchmark Quake 3 even 5 or 6 years after that game had came out, which was pretty incredible.
So you would say Quake 3 was before Crysis. It was Crysis before Crysis.
Yeah, it was kind of was the Crysis before Crysis. Yeah, it was known as this graphical powerhouse. Even as games surpassed it, the numbers or the benchmarks for Quake 3 were still useful to people, because even though they were going to be 200, 300 frames per second, it was people still wanted that information because it helped compare, I guess. And also it was a good indicator of how the many Quake 3 engine games might perform too. If you benchmark Quake 3, you can sort of reasonably extrapolate and say, okay, well, if it runs Quake 3 okay, that means we'll probably do fine running Call of Duty or Medal of Honor or whatever, all those games. But even within id at this time, there was strife. So we got trouble over at Ion Storm, we got trouble inside id. Nobody liked the new direction that Quake 3 was taking, or not everybody. And some thought that Carmack had too much power, because he just made that call himself and didn't really care what other people thought. He's like, we're making it multiplayer only, and that's just what it was. And so Adrian certainly thought that John Carmack had too much power. But what was he going to do? He was going to fire him? Can't do that. And Carmack was frustrated too, because nobody could see how great his new engine was. He was out here programming this awesome engine, unlocking so many new possibilities for the rest of the team, and it seemed like they didn't appreciate it at all. And, he wouldn't admit it, but he kind of missed the days where he and Romero would push each other, where he would write awesome technical code and Romero would make awesome gameplay stuff to go along with it. And Romero would push him to make better technical decisions, and the technical capabilities that Carmack would put into his engines would push Romero to make awesome gaming experiences. And they just didn't have that yin and yang anymore, that mutual respect, which is kind of a bummer for them.
It is a big bummer. This is the sad times, I think.
Yeah, this is the sad times. And over at Ion Storm, he's still trying to get Carmack to make stuff for him because they're using the Quake 2 engine and stuff. So he's missing his half too, and it's very sad. So they tried to hire a producer over at id named Graeme Devine. I think that's how you say his name, Graeme, Graeme.
I was saying it's either Graeme or Graham. It's just a weird spelling for Graham. I have no idea.
Strange.
So we can go with Graeme and just be wrong if we're wrong. I'm fine with that.
I guess so. Yeah. But Mr. Devine had made a really impressive CD-ROM game called The Seventh Guest. So he thought he could get in there and really make a difference, but the egos over at id, that's a good pun.
I saw what you were doing. I also liked how you said Mr. Devine to get around it. Good work.
Yeah. So the egos over at id were just too strong. He could not get people to play nice with each other. And then Unreal Tournament happened. So Epic Games, who you may now recognize now as the creators of Fortnite, were hot off of the FPS Unreal that they had just put out, which was a classic 90s style FPS. It had a lot in common with Quake. It was like a space thing. You go through and you kill the bad guys, and it had some kind of story going on there. I don't think it was quite Half-Life level story, but those games were often being compared to each other. But overall, it was very similar to Quake. And it also pushed technology in the same way that id Software's games often did too. So there was a real competition here. And around the same time that Quake 3 was announced, Epic announced their own multiplayer-focused FPS called Unreal Tournament. They claimed they didn't steal id's idea and that they'd been working on that concept for a long time, but still it was man, even the thing that we thought was unique about our game that we were kind of getting some flack for, even that is not unique anymore because Epic is also putting out Unreal Tournament. So there was just another, just piling on the hits, to the folks at id. So they weren't doing so hot without Romero, and even their new project now had stiff competition, and Epic might have been, better organized than they were. So if you were working at id in 1999, it was pretty rough. And several people quit during those days, which I understand. I might be tempted to as well. So they got ready to release Quake in December of 1999, and then Epic put out Unreal Tournament a week before Quake 3 came out, which was just brutal.
Yeah, that's a real cold move right there.
Yeah, that's throwing down the gauntlet. And you know what? If you're asking me, Unreal Tournament is the better game. I gotta give it.
Hot take?
Hot take.
Lukewarm take? Or
yeah, frozen take from 20 years ago. Unreal Tournament better than Quake 3.
Frozen, recently unearthed in Antarctica take.
Yeah. Fossilized take.
Fossilized take. Frozen fossilized take.
Yeah. So now we're at a three-way crossroads. We've got 2 multiplayer-only, story-free FPS experiences, and then we've also got Romero's Daikatana, which still wasn't out. But Ion Storm was in crunch mode working on it, even sleeping at the office. And those death schedules that Romero had promised were behind him. They were not behind him. It was clear the team needed to buckle down if they were ever going to finish Daikatana. So when the E3 demo of Daikatana turned out to be a buggy mess, Romero threatened to leave Ion Storm. So they went to Eidos and they got them to buy him out. So Romero had troubles with Todd Porter, who is a co-owner of Ion Storm. So when Eidos bought Todd and Jerry O'Flaherty's portions out, that made everybody happy. Todd and Jerry got good payday, and Romero got back control of the company that he wanted. So he threatened to leave, and instead Eidos bought out the other people who were at Ion Storm. So Romero got to keep control of his company and get those 2 guys out that he was not having a good time with. So Daikatana finally released in May of 2000. Yeah, over a year after that promised release date of February 1999. And, I think we've talked about it before, but Daikatana did very poorly. The game was bad. Everybody felt bad. No one liked it. The N64 port was a total mess. And it is remembered only for how hyped it was and then how bad it ended up being, which is very sad. And it's kind of the downfall of John Romero, because I don't know if he did much else after that. Certainly nothing big,
We'll talk a little bit about what's going on with him at the end of this, but this was kind of definitely the big crash for him, and we'll talk a little bit more about Daikatana in a second too. But chapter 16 actually kind of jumps back, because we've talked a lot about John Romero's personal life, but this actually talks about John Carmack's personal life and how he got married. He married Anna Kang, and they actually met when Anna Kang emailed him about an all-female Quake tournament, and Carmack's response was like, yeah, you'll get like 25 people. And then she got 1,500 people.
Nice.
And that kind of spawned like Carmack and her talking, because Carmack instantly respects people who prove him wrong. That's kind of how it works. That's how the book described it. And so he actually created a business development position at id, so she had a reason to move to Dallas, and then they got married in Hawaii. And in classic John Carmack fashion, he brought his laptop with him to Hawaii, because that man can never go on a vacation, apparently. But this is kind of an exciting time, because I feel like we always have like these moments with Carmack where he has like a new eureka moment, and his new inspiration at this time, so we're talking about 1999, was MMORPGs, EverQuest, Ultima Online. Those are all going on right now. And this is like Carmack wanted, you know, and it is actually a quote. It says, quote, "It allows us to have a virtual resource. Any of these digital resources allows us to create wealth from nothing, to be able to replicate wealth freely. Unlike most fundamental physical objects, with digital stuff, there really is this possibility of wealth replication. The world can be a richer place," end quote. So that's John Carmack talking about his holodeck, you know, cyberspace, the metaverse, whatever you want to call it, okay? And this is his new thing that he's super excited about. And he goes into the office and he shares it with the guys at id, and they are just not as hyped as he is at all. Because John Carmack wanted to not just make a game. A game? No, it's just a game. No, he wants to make a 3D environment. Yeah, games were a part of it, but it could do other things too. You know, Carmack wanted to build so much more, and the staff at id quickly was like, hey, we're a game company. We make games. You know, and they just kind of shut that down. So yeah, Mr. Divine, getting around it, wanted to do a game called Quest, which is essentially an MMO. It's a multiplayer RPG that's online. I don't know if it was actually massive, but it was an online RPG. And this actually excited Kevin and Adrian Carmack because it was finally not first-person shooter Space Marines.
Oh, yeah, they were getting sick of that by then. They wanted to go back and do Commander Keen, like after Doom, right?
Yeah, I think, Adrian always kind of hated Commander Keen because it was so cutesy. I think they just wanted to draw anything else, essentially.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're
and so
right.
Everyone on the team actually agreed that Quest would be id's next game, except for Carmack, because Carmack wanted to do something else. He wanted to do Doom 3. He'd been thinking about it for a while, and that a new Doom game could really take advantage of like all the cool lighting and engine effects he'd built. And Paul Steed, Tim Willits, and even Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, who had worked on the Quake audio, was very interested and excited at the idea of working on Doom 3. And of course, Adrian, Mr. Divine, and Kevin were not. They still wanted to do Quest. So they actually cited this old adage of like a band getting back together just because they thought they could do like their first big album better. You know, like, there's no reason to do it. And Adrian Carmack actually had a quote where he said, "Instead of dedicating 2 years to making something you've already done, why not try to push this genre that we created further?" Which I think really stands out to like what Adrian, like they always want to move forward, you know? And while John Carmack wants to move forward technologically, I don't think the design parts of the game, the reason why Romero left, are not as important to him. So that's where we're kind of at. So there's this tension there. So they couldn't decide. So what they decided to do was work on an add-on for Quake 3 called Team Arena, and that was directly in response to Unreal Tournament's team play. But Carmack, in the end, gave Kevin and Adrian an ultimatum. He walked into their office and said, quote, "I want to do Doom. Paul wants to do Doom. Tim wants to do Doom. If we don't do Doom, I'm leaving." And then he just left their office. Like he just walked out of the office in classic John Carmack fashion. Yeah. So we're going to jump cut to Romero now. And he is now living with Sandy Case. They moved out of the city and are now free from Daikatana because the game, as Tyler said before, did terribly. They only sold 41,000 copies in the US.
Woof.
Yeah, which is real bad. Not to mention the tons of bad press. Like PC Gamer said, quote, "signals nothing more remarkable than the end of an era in fandom," end quote. And Computer Gaming World said, quote, "yep, it stinks," end quote. Like it was just ruthless. Yeah, it was really bad. Meanwhile, though, Deus Ex did do well. Remember, Ion Storm was putting that game out as well.
Oh,
and
yeah,
that kind of helped Ion Storm out at the time. Like Deus Ex won some Computer Game of the Year awards from different press outlets. But before he could move on to his next big game at Ion Storm, he had to kind of help dig Tom Hall out of a hole that Tom Hall created with his game Anachronix, I think is how you say it. Anachronix? It's got to be Anachronix.
Anachronix? Yeah, that sounds right.
That sounds right to me. Fun fact that's not in the book, by the way. Anachronix, while a huge project like Daikatana for Ion Storm, as in it had like a ton of art assets and bad guy and just a huge game to put together, ended up actually being pretty good. Like according to the reviews I looked up, you look kind of like a turn-based sci-fi game that seems pretty original, where you were like a space private eye. Like at the time, like, and now it wouldn't be anything special, but at the time it was actually pretty big. It was like really, really held high, but it's like really good dialogue and the story was really good and people love the characters. It's actually a good game. So Anachronix, check it out. Is what I'd say.
Check it out.
The problem for Romero, however, is he found out that after Anachronix was released, Eidos? Was it Eidos?
I think it's Eidos.
Eidos would be firing some Ion Storm employees. So he went and looked at the list, and he saw that his name and Tom Hall's name were on that list of people to be fired. So what ended up happening is everyone in Ion Storm that was in Dallas was fired, and the only people that remained were Warren Spector and his team at Ion Austin. Wow. So because John Romero gave up and only had 49% ownership in the company, he got fired by the 51% that was Eidos that let him go. Yeah. So now John Romero, Stevie Case, and Tom Hall, they're looking like, what's our next move? What are we going to do? Okay. They thought that maybe making it like a game like Commander Keen would be cool. That was an idea. A Wild West shooter. They even went with a game about Madonna, possibly. And then at one point, they thought of working in the new mobile game market at the time that was kind of starting in the year 2000. We're talking pocket computers is what they called them.
We're talking flip phones.
Flip phones, yeah. In the end, John Romero ended up actually meeting with John Carmack at id's new headquarters, which was just now an ordinary office building. It was not anything special, not the Black Cube. It was across the street from an Olive Garden and a Hooters. It was just an office. And
there are unlimited breadsticks at Olive Garden?
I mean, that's good too. That's actually a big perk. Okay. And then Romero asked Carmack if he could license the Quake engine to develop a game based on the franchise, but set in a persistent world. And Carmack said, sure, why not? And here's the crazy part. That's the last the book talks about this conversation. They don't bring it up again. Like, no one knows about this game that Romero was talking about making with Carmack's engine. It's like a meeting, and then they just never do it, which is strange. But yeah, I kind of was like surprised when I read the book, and I was like, why don't they talk about this game that he asked Carmack if they would develop? I'm guessing it just kind of fell through and they decided not to go in that direction.
Yeah,
because
probably.
Romero did like move out of the city. Like I said, he was no longer in Dallas. He was about 30 miles outside of Dallas, and he kind of wanted to find like a new lake house like they had in Shreveport, a new place for his like small company to start. And he found this like big, amazing house with a fountain, a lagoon pool, a log cabin, a waterfall, a hot tub. It was a peacock farm also. So they had peacocks on the property. They named after video games. Pong, Puyon, and Phoenix were the names of their peacocks. And then Stevie Case and John Romero and Todd Hall named their new company Monkey Stone Games. And they wanted it to be small and fun and personal, you know, just like the old days. No more giant offices, no more gigantic budgets, just us making games, having fun. And while this all happened, Carmack got his wish to do Doom 3, but it was definitely at a cost. Kevin and Adrian, after like the ultimatum, and this is Carmack's description of it too. He wrote this in a .plan file. He claims that Kevin and Adrian fired Paul Steed in retaliation to Carmack giving the ultimatum of we do Doom 3 or I walk and abandoning Quest.
Dang.
Which is, yeah, pretty ruthless. Most people in Dallas could see this as John Carmack's last game, Doom 3. Like, that was the feeling in the town. Because he got into real-life rocketry.
Oh, I forgot about that. Armadillo Aerospace is the name of his company, right?
Yeah,
kind of like the original Jeff Bezos.
Exactly.
With Blue Origin. Yeah.
Yeah, and if that's not a rich people hobby, like, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
I feel like rocketry is Really, it's really, you got to have some money. So this all stemmed back, actually, which is funny because we're taking it all the way back to like the first episode where we talked about John Carmack going to juvenile home for making like rockets and bombs and explosives to steal those Macs.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's all coming back. It's all coming back around. Carmack actually rediscovered this hobby because he had an interview for Quake 3 where they asked him about these old days. And then he looked into rocketry and he started getting into it again. And like he's drifting away from games and even more towards rocketry. And they mentioned that's like definitely happening while Doom 3 is being developed. And it kind of goes like this. And John Carmack explains it best, where he says he hit a wall with 3D graphics. And essentially he said, quote, he was near the peak of the existing bodies of knowledge in graphics. So it's like there's nowhere more for him to go. Like he made a 3D graphics engine. Now the graphics are just going to get better, but he doesn't feel like he needs to tweak his engine anymore. And instead of hacking a computer, he wanted to hack gravity itself. That's how I would describe it. So the book, for like the ending chapter, goes into rocketry quite a bit. And we're not Rodex, A History of Rocketry. So I'm going to give you some quick highlights about rocketry and John Carmack. And then we'll talk about some more stuff, like where they went from here. Like I said before, like Carmack kind of saw this as like him before he was like a digital guy, like obsessed with his computer. He now sees the importance of real life because of rocketry, and he kind of moves away from that. At one point, he did experiment in making his own rocket fuel, which they mentioned in the book, which is a lot like moonshine, as in it's very dangerous and questionably legal. So they didn't really get far doing that. It involves like distilling hydrogen peroxide to a much, like it's like 70% when you buy it from the store, and you got to get it to 90%, and it can blow up your house if you do it wrong, essentially, is what they said.
Yikes.
Carmack was interested also in the coveted X Prize. I don't know if you remember this, Tyler, but this is where
kind of.
Yeah, if you get 3 people into space on board a ship, you get $10 million and the glory of taking amateur rocketry to space. And this is what Carmack wanted with Armadillo Airspace. Right?
Yeah.
It's the best.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So the book ends with a quote about Carmack's legacy that I think is really motivational. So we're going to read it. You ready for some motivation?
You bet I am.
Yeah, this is from John Carmack himself. Quote, "In the information age, barriers just aren't there. The barriers are self-imposed. If you want to set off and go develop some grand new thing, you don't need millions of dollars of capitalization. You need enough pizza and Diet Coke to stick in your refrigerator, a cheap PC to work on, and the dedication to go through with it. We slept on floors. We waded across rivers." End quote. And I thought that was a super nice way of ending the book. And then it talks about him shooting a rocket into the sky, which is fun. So I thought it was a great book. Like I think it's fantastic. If you haven't been reading this book and just been following along this podcast, that's fine. But I highly recommend you read this book.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of fun points from the epilogue, and also some points that like after that's not in the book that I kind of want to talk about. And we're not going to go too far ahead, but I just kind of want to close some loose ends that I felt like were left, like what I wanted more of. What I wanted to know about. So the first thing is there were some changes in the industry from the time that id Software was founded to where they both kind of went their separate ways. Video game sales reached $10.8 billion by the time the Johns essentially left gaming, well, in their iterations of Ion Storm and id. People who played video games grew up, which I also think was a really important point at this time too. Like, I don't think gamers are children anymore. I think, and we all know it, but there's plenty of adults doing it, myself included. Regarding all the Columbine lawsuits, a U.S. District Court judge threw out those lawsuits and said this, quote, "This was a tragic situation, but tragedies such as this simply defy rational explanation, and the courts should not pretend otherwise," end quote. And kind of everyone gave up their fight on video game violence after this. And it was really because, as Tyler and I explained before, the rating system, it put it in the parents' shoes to figure it out. And I think that's really what changed the game. Joseph Lieberman kind of just dropped it, actually.
It was kind of not going anywhere by that point.
Yeah, there was, because they wanted to make this other rating for something that would like rate all. It's like a government entity that would rate all media. And there was just like movies, books, TV, video games, and all those other industries were like, nah, we have our own systems in place. We don't need this. And then it kind of just got shut down. Oh, that Quake 3 add-on I mentioned, Quake
Team Arena.
Team Arena, it failed miserably. It was critically and commercially not great. John Carmack's innovations in PC gaming are amazing, and also in computing in general. Like, he did so much for the industry.
And he continued to even after this book. So the book is published in like 2002 or 2003. So it kind of leaves with Carmack being like, I want to make Doom. And they're like, no, you can't make Doom. But he did. He did make Doom 3. And he innovated a lot on the on his engine there for Doom 3. He worked on Quake 4, I think, as well. I know Quake 4 exists. I think Carmack worked on it. And then he would also go on to continue innovating with the Rage engine. He invented a technique called mega textures, which I don't even know what it means, but apparently it's a big revolution in, or was a big revolution in engine. So like the dude still went on to be awesome in the world of gaming even after the book was published.
Yeah, he just kind of found that life balance. I think that's what happened with John Carmack, is he found a balance between sitting inside, eating pizza, and drinking Diet Coke and only programming, to now he plays with rockets and has a family and does that stuff in his spare time.
And still
too.
Makes games.
Yeah. So also it's important to note he was the youngest person ever inducted into the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Hall of Fame. That's right, the Oscars of Gaming.
Wow.
John Carmack won the Oscar of Gaming. You know who won the first Oscar of Gaming? Shigeru Miyamoto, friend of this very podcast.
Oh, yeah, our good buddy Shigeru Miyamoto.
Yeah, he definitely listens, right? He's got to. Okay.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Romero, Tom Hall, and Stevie Case, with their company, Monkey Stone Games, went on to make a game called Hyperspace Delivery Boy that was actually really good. It was reviewed well. The fun part about it is you can't really find it anywhere. It's not on Steam. Like, I think you had to have, like, either a phone from that time with it on it, or they did come out with a Windows version that you had to, I'm guessing, was on a disc, because the game is pretty old.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a Flash version of it. That could be a possibility.
Maybe.
This is not in the book. This is me doing a little more research because I wanted to know more about Monkey Stone Games. They went defunct in 2005, but Romero and Tom Hall left in 2003 because Romero and Stevie Case broke up. So it kind of ended. Yeah, their romantic relationship ended, and even he said, he's like, that was out after that. The last project Monkey Stone Games works on, though, was the Area 51 remake of the 1995 arcade game for PS2, Xbox, and Windows. Which, if I recall,
I kind of remember that remake.
Yeah, I don't think it's a very good game, as far as I remember. I don't think we've just said we're done. Like, we're not done with Doom forever, but I do think we're done for now. Right? Would you agree, Tyler?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we've really done a lot with id Software and Doom, and this book's really great. John Carmack now is pretty much out of games entirely, as far as I can tell. Like, he worked on the Rage engine, I think, was the last thing he kind of did.
That might be the last thing he did, yeah.
John Romero has his own studio in Galway, Ireland, where also Adrian Carmack lives. It's called Romero Games Limited, and they are developing a turn-based strategy game called Empire of Sin, which apparently comes out in 16 days on December 1st, 2020.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a prohibition, like you're a prohibition mobster, and it's like turn-based strategy. And I was like,
wow.
That
sounds fun.
Yeah. So yeah, we did it. But Tyler, what you been playing?
I haven't been playing a whole lot of games the past week. When I've been putting time into Persona 4. Most nights I try to get like 20 to 30 minutes in, so I'm just like chipping away at it. I think I'm about 5 hours in now. I play it streaming from my computer over Steam Link to my phone. So that works out really well, and I can put in a little bit at a time. And I'm playing on easy mode. I got nothing to prove to anybody, you know. I just want to beat up some monsters and become best friends with all of my friends in Persona 4.
Yeah, be your own person. It's totally fine. I like it.
That's right. So that's.
Didn't you say that those Persona games are pretty punishing if you like die, right? If you have it on a different difficulty.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're playing on a harder difficulty, it's one of those games where it's like you die and you go back to where your last save, wherever that was, could have been hours ago. And I was like, I'm not. And if I lose an hour's worth of progress in this game, I'll probably just put it down forever. Like, that's one thing that I cannot put up with anymore, is losing tons of progress. So I was like, I'll put it on easy, then that'll make it so that will be very unlikely to happen. And so far, so good. I beat a couple bosses, and they weren't. I had to like, I couldn't just do nothing to win, but I had to think a little bit. But I was like, as long as I put some thought into it, I'm pretty much guaranteed to not lose here.
Dude, there's been some games where I have lost saves and I've just stopped playing for a while.
Yeah,
you know,
I can't do it. Like, I hate having to replay stuff.
Yeah, it hurts my soul. I don't like it at all.
Yeah. What
anything else been playing?
No, that's about it.
Yeah, nice. Well, I have been playing Super Mario Galaxy because I love it.
Oh, yeah. Game's great.
I love it so much. I'm having so much fun. Didn't know how cute B Mario was. B Mario.
Yeah.
Might be the cutest Mario. Yeah, I'm saying it. Hot take right here, right now.
Wait till we get to Catsuit Mario in Super Mario 3D World when that comes out next year.
Oh, man. You're right. I didn't know there was a Catsuit Mario. There's too many adorable
Mario.
Marios. Okay, so I've been playing Mario Galaxy. I've also, finally, Tyler, I put a couple hours into The Witcher 3. I did it. I'm committing to it.
Okay.
I'm playing it, and I'm really enjoying it. I also feel extremely overwhelmed. So if you've played The Witcher 3 and you got some tips or tricks, please let me know on the Discord, because I don't know what I'm doing. There's like so much going on. You can go like grab like all these plant ingredients all over the world. I'm like, are these important? I'm not grabbing them. I'm just going around on my horse and killing monsters. That's all I want to do. But it's pretty fun. I like it. It's definitely like an older game. You know, it feels like an older game, but not in a way that would dissuade me from it. And I really am digging it. I'm going to play that and more Mario Galaxy this week, I think. I'm having a good time. Also, Destiny 2 came out, Beyond Light, like the new expansion, and my heart rate's exactly the same. I just don't... Yeah. I'm not there yet, I think. I do want to play it at some point.
Yeah, me too. We'll pick it up at some point, I feel like. We'll get the itch. But right now, I'm good.
I've heard the story is good. That's one thing I heard. The story is good. Right now, multiplayer is broken, though, because of stasis.
Game is apparently always broken.
In the middle of their super. You can throw a grenade and freeze them. And it's actually really easy to do. So multiplayer is busted. But so that's all the what you've been playing. But we do have some emails to read. You want me to read the first email?
Sure.
I'm reading this email. It's from Mo. Hey, dudes. It's Mo. I always enjoy these philosophical discussions around video games and their impact on society. Violence in video games has been studied a lot since the 90s, and there are loads of media headlines all over the spectrum, but the current conclusion from the APA, the American Psychological Association, is that, quote, violence is a complex social problem that likely stems from many factors, end quote, and, quote, attributing violence to violent video gaming is not scientifically sound and draws attention away from other factors, end quote. For sure, there are correlations between violent people and forms of media containing violence, as Tyler mentioned last episode. But one key truth that all responsible researchers understand is that the correlation is not causation. When it comes to understanding mass homicides and acts of violence, a lot of researchers today are focusing more on serious mental illness than violent video games or movies. Also, I find it odd there was so much concern about violent video games in the 90s when movies in the 80s had already been pushing the envelope with violence. Even though RoboCop and Rambo are super violent movies, they both had a line of toys for kids that sold like hotcakes. It's strange that movies seem to receive more tolerance than video games when it comes to mature content. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I think the reason that is because it was a new form of media that adults at the time just didn't. They didn't get it because they weren't into it. And so they were like, movies they understood because they liked movies. But with games, it was like, I don't understand this. It's probably corrupting our children.
Definitely. Yeah. And Mo goes on to say, anyway, for me personally, I can pinpoint the time in my life where I have reached a level of maturity that allowed me to easily separate fantasy from reality, especially by my mid to late teens. The violence in most video games and movies had very little effect on me. Of course, that age is going to be different for everyone. As a dad, ESRB and movie ratings are helpful, but they are just a guideline. I'll also be monitoring my kids' individual maturity levels. My oldest is only 3, so it's going to be a while, but when she's older, I feel confident that I'll know to help her engage with more mature media when she's reached that level of maturity. I think generally once a kid starts asking questions about certain types of content, it's time to at least start having conversations about where their maturity level is at and walking alongside them in the process. That's a very good
sound like a great
observation.
Dad, Mo.
Yeah, Mo, you're a great dad. That being said, funny story, I was probably too young when I watched Jurassic Park for the first time, because for a while I was terrified that a raptor was going to jump out from behind the shower curtain in our bathroom and eat me. I had not yet mastered the art of separating fiction from reality. Haha. That's true. That movie was scary. Spider Butts, Mo. That movie, when he got bit off the toilet, I was so scared about toilets. I was like, what if a T-Rex breaks the roof down and I get eaten off the toilet?
That would be terrible. You don't want that to happen? It's
a real life problem still. I sound like I'm not over it, and I'm starting to think at 32 years old, I am not over it still.
Jurassic Park is a documentary.
All right. Do you want to read the next email?
Yeah, this one is from Old Man Ryan, I believe. What's up, my dudes? Podcasting community still rad as always. From hearing the name American McGee so much in the Doom episodes, it reminded me of an amazing couple of games, so I had to replay Alice Madness Returns. So I have a question for you fellas. Is American McGee's America's true darling, or is it Casper Van Dien? Stay awesome and fresh.
Oh, Casper Van Dien is the guy in Starship Troopers, one of my favorite movies.
Oh, I was going to say, I do not know who that is. I've not seen Starship Troopers.
American McGee, his first name is America, so it's hard to say he's not a true darling, but Casper Van Dien is in Starship Troopers, and that movie is all about, granted, they're comparing it to, Nazism, but it's all about patriotism to the max. I'm going to go with American McGee just because his name's American. But
yeah,
the movie Starship Troopers, that was actually a movie that I watched way too young, not realizing how, even though it's really campy and bloody joke, it's not real looking at all, and you go back and look at it, you're like, this is ridiculous. For a kid, it was so scary. So
yeah, very traumatizing.
Yeah. Also, you have Neil Patrick Harris as the intelligence officer. That movie is really good. You haven't seen it, have you?
I haven't seen it. No, I need to, I guess.
Oh, my gosh. Everyone, if you have homework, I don't think we've ever given homework on this podcast. Everyone needs to go watch Starship Troopers and be like, Mike, this was a terrible recommendation, but I'm not mad at you for it because it's entertaining, to say the least. With that, I think we're done for the day. Do you got any notes from me, for the audience to let you know?
No, I think that about covers it.
Yeah, well, if you want, you can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can go ahead and tweet at us. I am Mecoletta, Mecolletta. Tyler is Sneaker Elf, which is Sneaker with ELPH. And then, if you want to join our Discord, there is a tweet pinned to my Twitter profile. That's an invitation to the Discord. Or you can email us, and I will send you a invite. And that's pretty much it for the day. We did it.
Sweet.
We finished Masters of Doom.
We've read the whole book.
Read the whole book, did a little book club on it. I feel like I know a lot, and I think the one lesson we can take away is if you're 20 years old, you should never have that much money.
That's right.
It's a real lesson. But you want to say bye to everybody?
Yeah, goodbye, everybody.